Okay, so last night, the entire political map of South America basically got redrawn. A U.S. military strike in Venezuela has ended with the capture of President Nicolas Maduro. We're going to break down exactly how this happened, what both sides are saying about it, and the massive questions this whole thing raises. Let's just dive right in.
Wow. The very first official word from the U.S. government was just 4 words: the tyrant is gone. That's a blunt statement from Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau, and it leaves zero room for interpretation. As far as Washington is concerned, this is the end of the line for a longtime adversary.
And then, confirmation came directly from President Trump himself. Over on Truth Social, he announced a successful, large-scale strike, and get this, confirmed that Maduro and his wife weren't just captured, but had already been flown out of the country. I mean, the speed and the finality of that announcement, that's clearly part of the message they're sending.
So, how did this operation actually play out on the ground? Well, the details that are starting to emerge point to a classic Special Forces raid, one that was executed with incredible speed and precision by this elite unit they call the Night Stalkers.
For anyone living in Caracas, the night was just shattered at 2 a.m. by at least 7 huge explosions. That was the opening move, the real shock and awe moment that announced the arrival of these low-flying helicopters that were just swarming the capital's skyline.
And yeah, those weren't just any helicopters. They belonged to one of the most secretive and elite units in the entire U.S. military, the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, but everybody knows them as the Night Stalkers. Their whole reason for existing is to fly these incredibly complex, high-stakes missions, almost always in the dead of night.
Now, this wasn't just a surgical strike on one building. The Venezuelan government is reporting impacts across the capital and 3 of the surrounding states. But look at that last target on the list, Fuerte Tiuna. Hitting the country's main military complex? That shows this was a decapitation strike, right? The goal was to paralyze the entire Venezuelan command structure from the very beginning.
So in the aftermath of the strike, you've got these 2 totally irreconcilable realities starting to take shape. To the United States, this was a liberation. To Venezuela, it was a flat-out invasion. And this clashing narrative is really at the heart of the whole conflict.
And this is where you just see the massive diplomatic chasm laid bare. The U.S. is talking about a new dawn and bringing Maduro to justice. Meanwhile, Venezuela is calling it military aggression and an attempt at regime change. I mean, these aren't just different spins on the same event. They are fundamentally different realities being presented to the world.
But the Venezuelan government statement goes even further, and it assigns a very specific motive to the U.S. action. They're claiming this isn't about justice or democracy at all. They're saying it's about economics, a move to seize the country's huge oil and mineral wealth. It's a direct accusation of imperialism, pure and simple.
But strikes like this, they don't just come out of nowhere. To really understand why this happened right now, we need to look at the road that led us here, and at the really difficult questions this action is now forcing everyone to ask.
Okay, this timeline is absolutely crucial. For months, the U.S. has been targeting drug networks that are linked to Maduro. But then, just 2 days ago, Maduro himself says he's ready to make deals with the U.S. on, you guessed it, drugs and oil. Was that a real offer? A desperate plea? We might never know, because just 48 hours later, the Night Stalkers showed up. The timing here is incredibly provocative. And this is already kicking off a huge debate back here in the U.S. Republican Senator Mike Lee is already asking the critical question, what exactly was the constitutional justification for this? I mean, without a declaration of war from Congress, what gives the president the authority to do something like this? This is a serious legal and political firestorm that's just getting started.
So ultimately, this whole thing leaves us with the one fundamental question that's going to define this event's legacy. Was this a decisive action for justice, or was it a dangerous precedent for war, launched without any debate or authorization? That is the question really at the very heart of this story.